To chat with y'all today just because. No big reason. We'll just see how it goes. I heard the presidential debate's coming up. They'll be sitting on stools, so I wanted to practice in case I'm ever in a presidential debate. I'll be ready to go. There's also something a little less threatening about sitting on a stool versus me standing up. You can tell me if you like it or not. See how it goes. So, there I was. I was about in the third grade, living in Mississippi, Pascagoula, Mississippi, which is way down there in the south somewhere. And I can't spell it for you to this day, but it's named Pascagoula. My dad got his first job out of the Air Force, working in a submarine building shipyard there. And then we lived right on the edge of the Gulf Coast, on the edge of the water. In fact, they dug and dredged a man-made bayou up to our house. And my dad got his first sailboat, so he could walk out the back door and get on his boat and sail off to the, hinterlands. In any case, it's a very flat area, lots of mud flats, very shallow water. And so you had to be real careful about the tides, because even though we had a very shallow draft trimaran, still you had to watch out for how shallow it was. And there was an island, you could see the island from the coast where we lived, not a big island, just a little flat kind of a spit of land. And between the island and where my house was, there was a line in the water. Although it was shallow water, it was real dark. There was like dark water and light water. The dark water was where the oysters hung out, the oyster beds. And my brother would take me out fishing on it. It was a really good day. My brother was in high school and I was in about third grade. He put me in the skiff, about a 10-foot boat with a Johnson, maybe 5 horsepower engine on the back, and had a squared off front, and it could really hold just about 2 people, like a big rowboat really, with a motor on the back. And he would take me out fishing. We'd stay not in the dark water, but on the light water, because if you cast your line into the dark water, the oysters would cut your line if your hook got near the bottom. And then if they didn't bite it, I'm not sure if they bite it or they just kind of get sawed off on the edge. I'm not sure. It was a bad place to fish though. You lost a lot of line, a lot of bait down there. So we went out. It was kind of in the late afternoon. And he was fishing in the good part of the water, and so was I. In third grade I wasn't exactly much of a fisherman, but I did catch a fish. Hallelujah. And it was a little perch, I'm sure. A tiny little fish. But I had a little tiny rod. And when you hoist that little wiggly fish up on a really skinny child-sized rod, it just bounces around like it's on a spring. And the thing is, I was terrified of the fish. I'm like the fisherman who wanted to go fishing but prayed he would never actually catch a fish, because then you have to touch it. And it had those spiny things on the back that they always said could stick you in the finger and hurt like the devil. So I would always tell my brother, Rennie, would you take the fish off the hook for me? Because I didn't want to tell him I was afraid. I caught this fish. Why don't you handle it now? And so he knew that I was afraid. He said, no, you can't go fishing again until you take the fish off. Okay. So he keeps fishing, and this thing keeps bobbing up and down on my rod, and then it's a little fish, which are kind of hyper anyway, so it's wiggling even more than maybe a big droopy fish. This is like a big wiggly fish, little fish wiggling. And then, the sun starts going down. I still can't get the thing off. In fact, I'm really afraid to touch it. I'm kind of hoping it'll kind of flop around and fall off, but it never does. So he fires up the engine and starts heading back toward the bayou, towards the house. He says, I'm not taking it off for you. He said, you have to learn how to fish, and you have to learn how to take it off. Oh my God. So I'm terrified of this thing, and so I don't want to really touch it. So I put it in the bottom of the boat, in the front, up near the bow. and now it's flopping around on the metal boat. And I put my foot on it because I don't want to touch it with my skin. And then I try and grab just the hook part and see if I can wiggle it out. But it's so gross and nasty looking, and it's kind of got the gills going on. I'm like, oh, this is so gross. And I'm not sure if I ever got the thing off. But those fish, the little ones, are real wiggly. So I'm going to tie that story into some other things in my life. You know, when there's always something ahead of you, out in front of you, in the future, that we commonly say, you know, if and when this happens, then I will be happy. If and when something happens in the future, then I'll be happy, because I'm not really happy right now. But if I could get this thing to happen, then I would be happy. So when I was a little kid, well, a little older than third grade, I got into playing tennis. I was really into tennis. And I progressed through lots of lessons, public ones and private ones. I got to play on a team. And I used to think I was going to be a professional tennis player. Like you were going to be LeBron James. Yeah. No, this white guy's not jumping anywhere. In any case, I would say, well, as soon as I can play good enough to make the team, then I'll be happy. Or as soon as I get this tournament, or as soon as I can hit this shot. And I got better and better, but it was always something elusive. I could never quite get to really being satisfied with my game. Always trying to improve my game. Never really happy. Then, as I got older and I got interested in the opposite sex, I said, well, as soon as I get a girlfriend, then I'll be happy. But that was terribly elusive. I was more afraid of girls than I was of fish. But then you would say, you know, as soon as I get a girlfriend, then I'll be happy. And then I had a girlfriend. Then later on, older in life, and you say, well, as soon as I find the girlfriend and I get married, you know, then I'll be happy. Go to college and do school, but you know, you're waiting for that perfect person, that perfect relationship, and then you'll be happy after that. I don't know if you've ever done this, but then after you get that and you get married, you think, well, now you should be really happy forever because you got the one. And then, well, it doesn't quite work out exactly the way you planned. And then you say, well, maybe when I have a child, I have childbirth. Thomas might be like this. Thomas is in the back. He's about to have a kid in December. He's really happy about it. He's like, man, when I have that baby, my life's going to be great. But then, you know, after you have kids, then you don't get any sleep whatsoever. So I'm not sure you actually sleep for 18 years. So I'm not sure how happy you get after you get the kid. I don't know. Anyway, you know how life is. Like, it's always very elusive. You're trying to get happy, and it's like that fish. You can never quite get a handle on it. It flops around, and it's kind of slimy, and then it's always slippery, and it's bouncing up and down. And life is like you're trying to get happy, but you can't quite get there. So anyway, that's kind of my experience of trying to chase down happiness and hold on to it. Very elusive, very like the fish, like I can't quite get it. Then I went off to school, off to seminary. It's like, well, as soon as I learn everything there is to know about God and the church, then I'll be happy. No, that didn't quite happen either. But Jesus says, ironically, he says, you know, I came to give you life and give you an abundant life, or the abundant life, or life in all of its fullness is the word. Your life would be so full, it would be like overflowing is where we get the English word, abundance. Your life would be overflowing and it'd be more than enough. And he said, I came to give you that life. And I kept thinking, why is it I can't ever get there from here? My life is never quite happy enough. And I don't feel like I'm abundant. I feel like I'm always lacking something. Always wanting something else. And it's always in the future. And I can never quite get there from here. But Jesus said to the woman at the well, this wasn't in the story today, but I'll tell you about it anyway. He meets a woman at a well. And she has a conversation with him, and they're kind of chattering around the well. And she says, boy, I wish I didn't have to come out to this well every day in the heat and get water. I wish I had indoor plumbing, which won't come up for another 1,000 years, but I sure wish I had indoor plumbing. And Jesus says, well, I know you want water from the well, but I could give you water that's on the inside of you, that is always there like a spring. Not like a bucket of water, but like living water inside of you. And she doesn't quite get the point. She says, well, I still wish I had indoor plumbing. But she said, no, if you knew who you were talking to, I could give you water on the inside so you wouldn't get thirsty anymore. He's talking about an abundant life from the inside out. Something on the inside would change in her. And here's what I think it is. I think he wants the abundant life to be when we feel our connection to God and the source of all things. When we feel like we're connected, and we feel it, not just have it in our head, but we feel like we're connected to God, the source of all things, the source of all abundance, then your life becomes full of abundance. You feel like you're enough, and you feel like you have enough. And you're not chasing life out in the future, but you have life from the source on the inside. He wants to give us that feeling of being connected to the Father so that we have an abundant life. I don't think it's an abundance of things. God knows there's enough things in America and lots of people with things, but they don't seem very happy. And Jesus would say, yeah, I know they're not that happy because they don't feel the connection to God. They have a lot of things, they just don't have a lot of connection to something eternal, something forever. So, Jesus told another story, same gospel, the Gospel of John. He gave people a free lunch one time. They were hungry, they were out in the middle of nowhere, and he multiplies bread and fish, and they all have a great lunch. And then he says, after he gives them the lunch, just like the woman who got the water, he says, you know, you're going to be hungry again tomorrow, and I know you're going to come back looking for a free lunch, but I want to give you the bread that comes from heaven. The bread of heaven. That's the feeling of being connected to God, so that you never really feel hungry again on the inside. He's always pushing people beyond the physical and the outward to the inside where they're connected to God. Whether it's water or whether it's bread. A third time he said he healed a guy of blindness. And the guy is so happy, and he says, I can see again. And he goes and shows himself to the Pharisees. The Pharisees say, how did you get healed? So Jesus healed me. So that's impossible. Jesus can't heal people. Yeah, he did. I'm telling you. He healed me. And Jesus has a big argument with the Pharisee guys that says, you know what? You guys are so hooked up on the physical sight thing, and you don't believe that I was able to do that, but the truth is, if you were able to see God or feel connected to God, that's your biggest problem. It's not just that I healed someone, it's that I came to give them a relationship with my Father so that everyone would have an abundant life. And you refuse to see with your inner eyes. What this guy has been healed outwardly, but you refuse to see on the inside out. So you can tell throughout the whole Gospel of John, whether it's about water, whether it's about bread, or whether it's about healing, Jesus wants to give an abundant life, and I'm suggesting that the abundant life comes when we feel we are connected or in communion or relationship with God on the inside, and not trying to chase the future happiness if and when something happens. So, here's one more story today from the Gospel from Luke. It says 10 people came near Jesus, and they had a skin disease, some kind of a skin problem. They called it leprosy. So the 10 guys could not come near anybody else in case they were contagious. So it says they saw Jesus, and they, from a distance, they say, Jesus, have mercy upon us. And he says, well, go show yourself to the priests so that he can certify that you are clean and healed, and you can rejoin the community. And as they go walking to the priest, their leprosy and their disease is cured. They do get what they want. They got healed. And yet, one of them comes back, say thanks to Jesus. And Jesus, I thought there were 10. What about the other 9? Only one of them came back and recognizing that it was God who did this for them. Or remembering to say thank you to God. Remembering that the source of all abundance had healed them. And Jesus says, because you recognize this and you said thanks to God, not only are you healed of your illness on the outside, but he says as he goes on his way, your faith has made you not just healed, but you've been made whole. You've been made well. The one who can recognize the source of all things and say thanks and live in communion and connection, that's the one who is made whole. The other 9 got healed. One of them was made completely whole because he recognized his connection to God. So, the funny thing is, happiness is not out there somewhere in the future. Happiness comes from the inside out, where we feel like we're connected to the abundance of all things, the source of all things, to our Father in heaven who dwells here. When that connection is strong, when that connection is consistent, that's where life is really life. That is the abundant life. It doesn't have to do with things really, or things outside of us, but it's an inside-out job. And it's really hard. Unless we can be happy here and now, the way things are, no matter what's happening in our lives. I don't mean giddy happy. No one's happy all the time. But unless you feel connected to God now, when you get to the future and you get that thing you want, it still won't be enough. It's like trying to chase that damn fish. I think I'd never get a hold of. So, the abundant life is here and now. It's now recognizing and feeling and sensing the presence of God within the very source of your life and the source of all life. That's what it means to be alive, to be abundant, to be overflowing with life. And all those other steps along the way, where we want something out there, some of those will come and some of them won't. But you can still have the abundant life here and now, no matter what happens in the future. Of course, that's an easy thing to say. I'm the preacher, but I don't always do that all the time, right? I still kind of say, gee, if only the Redskins would win and the Cowboys would lose, then I'd be happy. But not so much. The abundant life Jesus came to give us, wants to give us, is when he connects us with the living God, helps us recognize God within, and then the rest of it, whether you get it or not, will be okay. But the abundant life is here and now, always present as we're connected with God within. May this sermon help you be awakened and aware of the presence within. And may the abundant life be yours. In the name of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.